Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in.
Okay, happy Thursday everybody, and to those of you who celebrate it, a very happy Dragon Boat Festival. First up, we have yet another spat threatening to undermine already shaky US-China relations. This time, Beijing has responded with outrage after US President Joe Biden called General Secretary Xi Jinping a dictator at a campaign fundraising event on Tuesday. At the event, a gathering of approximately 130 supporters at a private home in California, the US president, speaking on the subject of the Chinese balloon saga from earlier in the year, observed that Xi had not known about it, saying, quote, "That is what is a great embarrassment for dictators, when they don't know what happened." End quote. He added, quote, "The balloon was blown off course up through Alaska and then down through the United States, and he didn't know about it. When it got shot down, he was very embarrassed. He denied it was even there." End quote. Beijing, rhetorically at least, reacted to the remarks with much anger, describing them as extremely absurd and irresponsible, adding that they seriously violate basic facts, diplomatic protocols, and China's political dignity, and a open political provocation. While we are here, there are a few other comments on China made by Biden at the event, which we should take note of. Quote, "Don't worry about China. Worry about China, but don't worry about China." Laughter. "No, I really mean it. China is real, has real economic difficulties. What he was really upset about was that I insisted that we reunite the so-called Quad. He called me and told me not to do that because it was putting him in a bind. I said, all we're doing, we're not trying to surround you, we're just trying to make sure the international rules with air and sea lanes remain open, and we're not going to yield to that, on that. So now we have India, Australia, Japan and the United States working hand in glove in the South China Sea and the Indian Ocean." End quote. Of course, this exchange has happened just after US Secretary of State Antony Blinken concluded his meeting with Foreign Minister Qin Gang, top diplomat Wang Yi, and General Secretary Xi Jinping himself in Beijing, the first Secretary of State visit to Beijing since 2018. A trip initially hoped to provide some guardrails in the relationship, but ultimately with little success to these ends. We did a deep dive into the trip on Tuesday. Let's just supplement that here by examining a few more Chinese commentaries on the trip. Once again, our purpose is to get an understanding of the Chinese elite worldview and information environment. In a widely shared speech delivered by Yang Tao, the Director General for North American and Oceanic Affairs at the Chinese Foreign Ministry, expressed, quote, "The US's characterization of the peaceful resolution of the Taiwan question as the core content of its One China policy is a tampering of its political commitment." The word employed, 篡改, can be translated as tamper, distort, twist, or usurp. In a separate post the following day, Tuesday, Yang Tao boasted that Blinken's trip was a political win for China, as it showed that the balloon incident had been put behind them, writing, quote, "The US obviously blinked first in this round of strategic confrontation." End quote. On the sidelines of the Ukraine Recovery Conference in London yesterday, Blinken met with representatives from Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom and the EU to brief the group on his meetings with Chinese officials in Beijing. An official Department of State statement on the briefing expressed, quote, "The G7 noted the importance of close coordination on the PRC and reaffirmed that the G7 is more united than ever." End quote. Meanwhile, at a press briefing on Wednesday, a spokesperson of the Office of the China National Narcotics Control Commission expressed, quote, "The US claimed fentanyl precursors, tablet press and capsule filling machine are not subject to control according to international drug control conventions, and they are all common products," end quote, adding that China has always earnestly fulfilled its obligations under relevant laws. Quote, "The PRC side is at best being quite unconstructive if they are sincere in wanting to improve the US-China relationship. Fentanyl is a top, if not the top issue for many members of Congress, given how it is ravaging their districts and the PRC could go a long way towards building goodwill if they were to make serious efforts to help the US deal with the fentanyl issue." End quote. Next up, EU business confidence in China continues to decline. Hey guys, if you enjoyed today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit that like button. It's just me making these episodes every day. It's a lot of work, but your guys' support is a huge source of motivation. Subscribing and sharing is a huge help as well, and for those who can go the extra mile and help me keep the channel financially sustainable, Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee links are in the description below. Thank you so much, everybody, for the ongoing support. Next up, as we know, Premier Li Qiang is in Europe this week. We did a deep dive into the German leg in yesterday's video. Over the weekend, we will look at the French leg and EU-China developments generally. For today, we will examine the findings of the just-released EU Chamber of Commerce European Business in China Business Confidence Survey 2023. Despite the optimistic comments from some German business leaders, which we saw yesterday, the findings of the survey were not very positive. The Business Confidence Survey, published yesterday, Wednesday, is an annual survey conducted by the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China in partnership with Germany-based consultancy Roland Berger. We are now quoting the survey directly. Faced with growing risks in a more volatile operating environment, European companies have started reviewing their investment and operational strategies and ensuring their supply chains are fit for more uncertain conditions. 64% of respondents reported that doing business in China became more difficult in the last year, the highest on record. 30% of respondents reported year-on-year revenue decreases, an increase of 20 percentage points, the highest on record. 11% of respondents have shifted existing investments out of China, and 8% have taken the decision to move future investments previously planned for China elsewhere. 1 in 10 report that they have already shifted or plan to shift their Asia headquarters or business unit HQ out of mainland China. There has been a 13 percentage point reduction year on year in the number of respondents that view China as a top 3 destination for future investments. 75% have reviewed their supply chain strategies over the past 2 years, with 24% reporting plans to at least partially onshore their supply chains into mainland China, and 12% having already shifted parts of them out of the country. We end the direct quoting here. After the publication of the survey, the president of the EU Chamber explained that though not all European companies are fleeing for the doors en masse, the decline in confidence in the survey signaled that, quote, stakeholders in China should worry about the direction, end quote. What is driving this collapse in confidence? The survey results give us a good idea. Market access and regulatory barriers remain widespread, with 62% of respondents reporting having missed business opportunities in 2022 as a result, up 20 percentage points year on year. Over a third of respondents, 36%, ranked as a top 3 challenge China's economic slowdown, quote, reflecting just how concerned they are over the headwinds facing China's economy, end quote. Politics also continues to impact businesses. Nearly 6 out of 10, 59%, of respondents reported that the business environment in China became more politicized over the past 12 months, up 9 percentage points year on year, and over a quarter, 26%, have faced challenges stemming from consumer demands becoming politicized. We note that this politicalization is happening both within China and outside of China. However, as we can see here, who the EU companies blame for this is very clear. Quote, the Chinese government is perceived as the main source of increased political pressure, as reported by nearly 2/3 of respondents, followed by the Chinese media, 46%, and international media, 45%, end quote. Meanwhile, quote, the exodus of foreign nationals, an issue exacerbated by China's zero-COVID policy, end quote, is also an issue. Nearly 1 in 6 respondents report having no foreign nationals working in their China operations, a figure that jumps to 21% for small and medium-sized enterprises. The survey also found that the fallout from Russia's invasion of Ukraine has also changed how many view the China market. Quote, by forcing businesses to seriously consider if, how they may be impacted in the event of an escalation of tensions in the Taiwan Strait. End quote. So, while de-risking or decoupling policies from the EU and other places is indeed a serious concern for businesses, the survey makes it clear that the biggest factor to improve business confidence for EU companies in China lies with Beijing. Quote, a majority of respondents, 63%, report that they would be willing to increase their China investments if market and regulatory barriers were removed. China would benefit enormously from taking further steps to make its business environment more favorable to private enterprises, both Chinese and foreign. With China now reopening to the world, following 3 years of isolation, there is a window of opportunity for the government to demonstrate that the pro-business promises recently made by its leadership are more than just words. End quote. However, despite this very clear articulation of primary concerns, straight from the horse's mouth, as the saying goes, Chinese state media and experts speaking to them, in a move as counterproductive as it is unsurprising, have told these EU businesses and the EU chamber that actually they are mistaken. Quote, the report is not so much a response to China's business environment and policies, but rather a response to the EU's tightening investment and economic and trade policies in the name of de-risking. European companies investing in China are actually subject to more constraints and restrictions from the European side rather than the Chinese side. End quote. Is this an accurate reflection of elite Chinese views, or simply a spin for domestic consumption? If it is the latter, it is understandable. But if it is the former, then it would suggest that the highly restricted information environment and inflexible narratives it produces is dangerously restricting the scope for productive policy debate among policymakers in Beijing, which in turn increases the risk of policy missteps to the detriment of the nation and its economy. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a wonderful Thursday, and I will see you all tomorrow.